All right. Welcome, everybody, once again to another episode of the Traveling Hoopers podcast. Our usual host, Alan Pettigrew, is out today, but, we are still here as scheduled. It is I, Calvin McGowan, and I'll let this man here introduce himself.
Come one, come all. This is a Traveling Coopers podcast. I am your host. Wait, did you already do
Yeah,
that?
I got that, yeah.
Oh, okay, my bad. No, this is Philip Arthur Dixon, pad for the ones closest to me. And there shall not be any Lavar Ball hate on this podcast. Go.
Uh, okay. That reminds me. Apparently, LiAngelo Ball got a Pistons contract?
Yeah, he got a 1 year non-guaranteed contract with the Pistons. And you know, training camp, you're in the process of trying to make the team pretty much at that position, right? And from what I hear, according to my sources, which is just, I always hate it when people go, according to my sources, but this is things they were off the internet. But according to my sources, which is like ESPN, Fox Sports, not the shows, but like the articles from their websites, like he has a strong chance of actually making the team. Like he actually has a strong chance. He's listed as a guard. This might have been the first time might have been listed as like a small four or something like that. With his small stint at UCLA and other places, Lithuania and such as that. But yes, he does have one contract, or the non-guaranteed, or one way non-guaranteed. We already know about Lonzo and Pelicans. We already know about LaMelo Ball in the Hornets. Yeah. Anybody who tries to speak ill of LaVar, really for me personally, at any point, right? At any point, in the past, they had no credibility with me. But if they try to do that exact same thing now, they should not have any credibility with anyone moving forward, right? Like there are three sets of brothers in the NBA right now: the Holiday brothers, the Ball brothers, and the Antetokounmpos. There's three of them also, but we know all the Holiday brothers. We know all the Holiday brothers. We know all the Ball brothers. We don't know all the Antetokounmpos. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a one that was on the bench with the Lakers. There was the one that is obviously Giannis, and then there's another one somewhere. And the only reason I even know about this guy is because ESPN put
Thanis,
a picture
I
of him.
think.
Say it again.
That one is Thanis, I think is his name. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Honestly, no idea. All I know is he'll get.
Wait, is he still in the league? I thought he wasn't.
This picture ESPN posted was probably a week ago, because LiAngelo, they posted it as like a three sets of three brothers, whatever, and it was after LiAngelo was a week and a half ago.
Okay.
So it was after that, week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that LiAngelo was, that the contract was presented to LiAngelo. So it was somewhere between that. So he's still in the NBA somewhere, right? Which is crazy because we could have had 4 sets. The Plumleys, Mason, the one they're all are the same people to me. The one that's
isn't one of them in the Navy or something?
One of them went to Air Force, something like that, the military. He went to one of the branches of the military. But he had a chance to go to the NBA, but didn't because he wanted to serve his military and be a colonizer amongst them, whatever. But he wanted to be in the military, whatever it is, so he went over there and did that. But that could have been another one. But instead, we got the 3 Ball brothers, and LaVar Ball is the truth. It's really funny because I've been watching ESPN nowadays, and they're like, or ESPN, Fox Sports 1, and they're like, yeah, give a shout out to LaVar. And then all of a sudden now, they're trying to give itty bitty, they're trying to give bits of shout outs to the mother. I think her name is Nancy, I believe. And they're trying to give a little bit of shout out to her also. But I'm like, So when you have to show him love, you want to like divide the love, but when you want to hate, you put all the hate on him. I think it's ridiculous. But I think it's just it comes along with the game, I guess. If you want to be a public figure as a father of sports heads, of
I
athletes.
mean, in fairness, as far as like centralizing the hate, he did go. He was very public about all the shit talking he did
The
and
normal guy.
whatever. Like,
Listen,
I'm just. Mm,
I've seen I've seen LaVar Balls on the benches of every basketball game I pretty much went to of any middle schooler of any middle school game at any high school game. Like there's a quote unquote LaVar Ball there.
mm-hmm,
His boys just happened to make it to the NBA.
mm-hmm.
He's a normal guy. Like
Oh, no,
he's a
yeah.
he's a dad. But his boys just happen to, be like 6'6", 6'7", and point guards. You know what I mean? Like his sons just happen to be really, 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 really skillful. And not just happen to be. I don't want to take credit away from him, but his boys are skillful, so they were able to go to higher levels. But him as an individual, he's if you've been in the basketball realm at any age, he's just another parent that's on the sidelines. But people wanted to pretend like he wasn't. Like he was like an outlier. Like, can you believe LaVar Ball? Can you believe LaVar Ball this? LaVar Ball that? And the whole time I was watching, I'm like, yeah, because that's so and so's dad, and he was like that when I was in 8th grade, and that's so and so's dad, and he was like that when I was a senior in high school. You know what I mean? But all I wanted to say is I just wanted to get that off my chest immediately. No LaVar Ball slander will ever happen on this podcast. It will never happen on my timeline, or I'll unfollow you. It will never happen on my Instagram, or I'll block you. It will never happen because if you think negatively towards him, then I can't trust you as an individual to think logically about anything.
Well, that was kind of wild. But um, in other NBA news, Westbrook to the Wizards for what was it? John Wall
First
and
round draft pick.
yeah, a fairly heavily protected one, I want to think.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Hmm.
Um, it's fine. Like Westbrook and Bradley Beal is a good duo. Like, yeah, it's a good duo because Bradley Beal spreads the floor and they don't play anything alike. So it's a good duo. It's a good, deal in that sense for the Wizards. They have two star players that play nothing alike, which is always good in a basketball scheme way of doing things. But also at the same time, it's the Wizards and they'll never win anything.
Yeah.
Um, it's just true. Like, it's just true. The Wizards, they just never win anything. It is what it is. Like, yeah, you had Gilbert Arenas at one point, but like you still lost really early in the playoffs, even when you had him. You got John Wall. Injuries happen. Bradley Beal, for some reason, signed that crazy long deal. Like, it just happens. It's what it is. The Wizards are not a winning team of NBA status. But you got the Rockets. If James Harden stays, which now looks like he's just gonna stay, and that John Wall move essentially solidified it in my mind, that he was staying. I am curious because John Wall is inherently a facilitator. He, like that is what he is, right? Like he is a Chris Paul with less opportunities. Because Chris Paul, we've only seen John Wall with the Wizards. We haven't had, and once again, it's the Wizards. So we haven't had a chance to see John Wall like in a situation that could ultimately be successful. Chris Paul had the Clippers. Chris Paul had that one Hornets year. Chris Paul had the Rockets. Chris Paul's been in good situations to like win. So, but their games are like kind of alike. But I'm curious about the tandem of John Wall and James Harden because I think it'll work. I think if Chris Paul if James Harden could work with Chris Paul And James Harden could like semi work with Westbrook, except Westbrook was like he seemed off in the playoffs for whatever reason, right? He just watching him seemed a little off. I don't know why. Wasn't as explosive. It was just kind of I don't know, seemed off a little bit. But if James Harden can work with Westbrook, he can definitely work with John Wall. And I'm glad that John Wall's in a different situation than the Wizards. Like I really am. So I'm really interested to see how this works, and I really hope it does work.
Like, do you think he's gonna come back to the same player that like we've seen? 'Cause he hasn't played a whole lot of basketball the last couple of years.
Um, I think John Wall's game allows him to come back. Like John Wall's game allows him to come back from injury and be more likely to be the same player. Because yes, he's fast, like fast with the ball, north to south, whatever, coast to coast. But he's skillful. He's crafty with the ball. And he's not like he's a good scorer, but his main thing is facilitating the rock. Like that's what he's really good at, passing the ball, facilitating, get everybody involved. He's happened to be trying to get the Wizards involved. So with the Rockets, I think that with the way he plays, he should be able to come back and be just, even though he might not be just as explosive because he's also getting older and whatever, but he should be able to have significant impact. It might be a little less than when he was with the Wizards, but it still should be significant, I'll say. Also, John Wall has like one of the greatest hoop mixtapes of all time. One of let that be known. Like I remember like being in AU tournaments in like Los Angeles in high school and like sitting on the toilet before I was getting ready to go play a game and like watching John Wall's hoop mixtape, like trying to get myself hyped because he had the most hype hoop mixtapes of all time. So that's also another reason why I always root for John Wall.
But it it's just like it's still very like it's one of the things like it's still very possible like he comes back and he's not quite the same player.
What injury?
And the thing is, it's like correct me if he's never been much of a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like he is also kind of a ball dominant player.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, hard like what Chris Paul is ball dominant. Westbrook tends to be kind of ball dominant, and those things that like having them didn't necessarily pay dividends for Harden or the Rockets necessarily in terms of like if you're trying to be like we're trying to win it all or what have you. So like how would having Wall be more than a lateral move?
I think more than a lateral. One, I think if James Harden could work with Russell Westbrook and ball dominance wasn't an issue, then I think John Wall is like much easier than that. I'll say, like I would give it that. He had like John Wall is closer to a Chris Paul than he is a Russell Westbrook. Uh, in terms of just like how they want to play the game, right? Like John Wall's not gonna go over there and steal a rebound from a big man. Like that's not what he's gonna do. But he's always gonna be more like a Chris Paul, taller, just a bit less crafty, but still crafty. But if James Harden could play with Westbrook and ball dominance wasn't necessarily an issue, then I think he'll be fine with John Wall all in the same. Um, but I think the pieces around them also, contribute to if the success is going to be lateral or not. I mean, the DeMarcus Cousins is not the DeMarcus Cousins I remember. It's unfortunate, but he's been injury plagued. He's been plagued with injury, which is unfortunate. So we don't know what we'll see out of him when he comes back. Um, and they have a lot of like the same players, a few different players, but mostly the same players on the roster. So I'm not sure if like lateral moves, like I don't think it'll be Well, it might be lateral because they might get the same. They might get to the same point in the playoffs. But once again, we'll have to see. Everybody's getting a little bit older. Injuries happen, and I think more injuries going to happen this year because of the once again because of the shortened off season. So we'll just have to see, honestly. But I hope that isn't the case. I do want to see John Wall succeed.
Gonzaga and Baylor, probably the most anticipated um, game of the season of the college basketball season because it was the top two teams in the country playing each other during non-conference regular season, what have you. It got canceled or postponed. One of them I don't consider it canceled until they say we have a date. Um, it was postponed or what have you due to COVID concerns. Um,
They shouldn't
meaning
play basketball.
they should not, but we are here and it's happening anyway.
Stupid.
Um, and of course, it's probably Bailey's most anticipated game since Brittany Griner graduated. Um, but it's also just kind of a shame because both the teams look pretty good. Having watched both of them, what was it? I think Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
Um, the Zag played West Virginia, and Baylor played Illinois, and they look like very good programs. One of the Zag's better players, Jalen Suggs, got hurt. He was able to come back, and they got out a win. But it was one of those games that, doesn't happen too often, so it's kind of a shame that it didn't get to happen.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know what to say. Like, these things are gonna happen if you're more work or if you're more focused on like the capital you'll gain from athletics than like the athletes themselves and the faculty members themselves, the coaches, the janitors, the people who wipe the courts. Like, if you're more focused on like the money you'll gain than you are the actual people who are making that money, capitalism, then these things are bound to happen. But we should be playing. But it is what it is. Like I hate when people say like it is what it is as like I feel like a lot of times a cop out answer. But
Hmm.
I think at this moment that's kind of what it is though. Like it is what it is because you're allowing them to play. So like these hazards are gonna happen, and you can't necessarily control it. Like you could, there's not gonna be a bubble. You know what I mean? Like you can't
Hmm.
control it. Um, you can't control it if like people were trying to do in like November or not November, like people trying to do in like June, May, July. Like you can't control it. So if you want to play in open spaces with everybody there, not everybody there, but enough people there to where something might happen, then you're running the risk of people getting sick. And if you think it's worth it, go ahead. But that's obviously what they're doing because they know money hungry America. But tweet so.
I mean, in fairness, at least as far as coaches and players are concerned, and it doesn't mean they should be playing, but players want to play games. Coaches want to coach. So the desire to play
Yeah.
is kind of a natural one. Even if you can look at it and be like, this is probably not that great an idea this year. Because it's not. For any number of logical and understandable reasons.
I
But
mean, it's
hmm,
just strange. Not necessarily strange. I just find it interesting that kids are the athletes, right? So like for college, they're kids, right? They're not living adult lives. They're kids. They don't even have jobs. They have jobs, but we all know that whole entire issue. All of a sudden, you want to listen to them? like we want to play. You know what? You're right. They want to play, so they should let them play. Listen to the athletes. All of a sudden, you want to listen to the athletes? You know what I mean? Like it's so situational, and there's nothing constant about the dialogue that it's kind of infuriating because all it is the NCAA going, all right, this falls in line with our agenda. Let's do this. No, 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 that doesn't. So we'll just disregard that. Like that's all it is. But like I feel like it's in our face, but enough people aren't seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because you're you making these kids work during this pandemic and all kind of stuff, or kids play. You pretty much classified them as essential workers, but you don't want to pay them. So it falls in line with why are you paying people the least money, or for college athletes no money, to create entertainment for us as we sit at home. It makes no sense. Like it really makes no sense. But it's the NCAA just trying to get a fast one on everybody, which they're doing. Like it's working, unfortunately, but it's working. But it's like they're dangling it in front of our face, like a Twinkie in front of a fat man, and we just don't see it because we're so focused on our we being everybody more focused on like trivial things, I guess. Which in hindsight, not in hindsight, like if you think about it, like no matter how much you love sports, like I love sports, Calvin, you love sports, Alan, I'm assuming also loves sports. Um, if we love sports, but in terms of life, sports are trivial. But they're acting like it's not. So it's like I don't know, like you can't allow a business, which is NCAA, college basketball, sports, whatever it is, football, whatever. You can't allow a business and people who are businessmen, being the CEOs and all these people, the heads of boards, all kind of stuff. You can't allow them to dictate certain situations, which the pandemic is one of certain situations because they're thinking more of pocketbook than anything else. Honestly, the government should have stepped in and been like, okay, we'll pay, because you don't need to pay the kids; they got scholarships. But the government should have stepped in and said, we'll pay the scorekeeper guy, whatever, his enough money so he can survive with a job. We'll pay enough for the whoever it is that has a job who actually contributes to like us viewing the game, or the referees or whatever, who that's their actual job and they actually get paychecks for that. We'll contribute so this doesn't have to be a thing. Since that didn't happen, you're allowing businessmen and women to dictate the lives of too many people off of money, and it's unfortunate. That's what I'm saying.
All right. So if I may, one, um, I tend to agree with you, but like we can easily go off on a tangent that moves us away from basketball podcast. So like if nothing else, we can brain check that or what have you. Also, this is something that I know about because I checked once, but scholarships are technically taxable income. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but what I will say as far as like monetary motives and whatever, that while like I feel like coaches and players are more in the mindset of like they just want to like coach the play because like it's what you do, it's what you love. Like there is some like higher up certainly in terms of like athletic directors and conferences and schools who are struggling and trying to like justify their full price tag when people aren't getting in person classes, that there is probably some money motive to it. Definitely, and it's definitely stronger the higher up you go, because at the end of the day, the student athlete is gonna have their scholarship, and the coach is gonna, and the basketball coach and football coach are gonna get paid their money regardless. Like it's a salary.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like save I don't know the odd incentive or what have you, but those basketball and football in particular, they generate money for schools that given the pandemic or what have you, a lot of them aren't exactly rolling in dough at the moment. Um, so like I just wouldn't want to be like the president of the university at the moment, just me personally, because you have some, shall we call them, interesting decisions to make. Uh, but in less vaguely apocalyptic fare, um, oh yeah, um, something that I've thought about and I've kind of been thinking about a little since the last podcast, where um, you made the argument that Self has underperformed in his time at Kansas. Um, I would like to make the argument, um, rightly or wrongly, that Mark Few is probably the best coach in basketball. Like on the whole, to
Wait, who is? I can't hear you.
Mark Few, Gonzaga.
Okay.
Um, that argument mainly resting on where he's taken, like where his program started from when he took over to where it is now. Arguably the best program in the country. Definitely one of the best teams in the country without question. Um, being a good high major to being a great basketball program, winning against the highest competition continually. They were in a national title game not too long ago. They will probably be there again in the not too distant future. Um, again, barring any unfortunate stuff, or more COVID. But
I mean, he also took the most from the less. Like he didn't have. He took the most. He got the most out of the least. Like he did. Like before he got there, Gonzaga was nobody's. All of a sudden, Gonzaga's Gonzaga now, who we know Gonzaga to be. And I will say this: that last time we were talking about Tom Izzo and Bill Self, I was really for that Bill Self argument I was making. Like I was really for it.
mhm.
But then at a certain point, I was just stuck in a vortex and I couldn't get out because I was like, oh, dude, like in my head, I was like, you're too deep. You got to keep going with this argument. Like, because at one point, I like didn't believe what I was saying. Like, I was like, you're going really far, man. And then I was like too deep. I was too deep in the sauce. So I will say that a lot of what I said, even though it's factual, I wouldn't go as far to say that he is underachieved because if you remember KU in the 90s, they were not good. There was a long stretch that no one talks about when KU was not good at basketball. Everybody wants to go straight from Paul Pierce to Roy Williams to Bill Self. There was a long stretch when KU was not good at basketball. Um, uh, but there was a lot. But Bill Self's successor was Roy Williams, or he succeeded Roy Williams. So Bill Self worked with a lot. He had a lot going for him. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it could be way worse. It could be way worse. So I wouldn't say he underachieved. I'm just saying I would say I would say he's done fine with what he's gotten.
Like in fairness, now that I'm looking at it though, like while we're like Gonzaga, obviously Gonzaga wasn't Gonzaga like it is now, but like they've been a good mid major for a while. Like put this in perspective, their last losing season was before either of us were born. Um,
What year?
um, the 89-90 season, like
I
the
was
last
born.
season below 500.
I was born. I was born.
89-90.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
I'm just like,
Or,
like
or am I?
I'm pretty sure you're joking, but regardless, um, but yeah.
I've always
So
wanted
like
to
it's not.
be a gag about how old I am.
Hmm?
I always just wanted to be a running gag about how old I am. I want to start it today and continue on for like 5, 6 years down the road, then finally reveal it. But it didn't work out too well.
Oh well. But, but yeah, the Zags as a program have been good for a while. But Mark, you took it from like where it was, just a good mid-major, to an amazing basketball
Mm.
program.
Okay.
Brought it and I feel like, and let me double check myself before I say something wrong.
Yeah, fact check yourself because we don't want to be giving out fake sports news. We are not. Who gives out fake sports news? The Ringer. I'm joking. They probably don't do that. We are not. One of
One of
these
them
humble.
tabloids.
Well, yeah, we are not. We're not TMZ, right? We're not some trash tabloid sports. Look who so and so's dating. We get the facts right, and I'm just making time until Calvin gets his thoughts together about this information. I'm just now.
No, this is just me. This is just me checking stuff.
I was like, because now
Okay,
I'm blabbering. So
but um, wait, how? I don't even know the answer to my own question now. But
what
I
is it?
guess the closest. Well, it's just because I'm like I want to be like the close, like the in far in terms of like what they did for their program. Arguably the next, like the only other person who's done as much for their program is probably Coach K.
Yeah,
Like,
but I don't know what I don't really know what Duke looked like before Coach K because isn't he like 100?
yeah, he's old. He's pretty old.
I mean, yeah, I don't know who was a coach before Coach K.
Apparently a dude named Bill Foster.
Did he last long?
Um, he lasted 6 seasons. 3 of them were good.
His
3
last
of them
season was
were
when?
mediocre. There was a dude before him named Neil McGeachie. I'm probably mispronouncing that. He had a bad season. That was his only season.
Hey, when was the guy before? When was Coach K's first season coaching?
The 1980-81 season.
80, 81?
Yeah, 80-81.
He's been coaching for 40 years.
I guess
That,
so. Shoot.
that's he must love the game because that's a lot of commitment. And for a lot for 20 years. He was also the Team USA coach, and he just stopped doing that now for the Olympic teams. He just we were supposed to have one this year, but I guess next year he's not going to be that anymore. And I don't even know who that's going to be. It's probably going to be somebody like the Boston's head coach, something like that. The Celtics head coach, probably be somebody like that. Typical. Not actually, it can't be that because it's much less about X's and O's and more about personality traits and like understanding how to be like a player person. And we all know Brad Stevens is not that. He's an X and O guy. He don't know how to control his players. So I
I
doubt.
mean, what are you supposed to do about Kyrie Irving?
Huh?
Like, well, I'm just like, I'm like, I don't. Has he had any issues with players? Because I don't really think Stevens has.
They had the whole
Outside of
thing
like,
with Marcus Smart and Jalen Brown, right?
we were talking about that thing where they were hot after like going down
Yeah.
0-2. In fairness, like if I'm him, I probably just, unless they're like about to fist fight, I'm probably just gonna let them hash that out. It needs to get aired out so that we can win games.
Just let it be Tyronn Lue. Tyronn Lue seems to be players' favorite coaches, assistant coach and head coach now. But Tyronn Lue seems to be the greatest player personnel coach in the NBA today. Did you see that thing that Paul Pierce said about Doc Rivers?
Nah, what do you say?
Flip some time so I can find it on Instagram because it
Okay,
was off of because
but talking about Coach K, also something I thought about for a while is like Coach K. If like Coach K's career started today, the way it did when he started back like when he first got to Duke, he would not become Coach K. Like he would have just been some dude who coached Duke for a little while.
I
Because
mean
2 of his first 4 seasons there were losing seasons.
he just would. People are
Like
impatient nowadays, I guess.
like his first like these are his first 4 seasons. 17 and 13, 10 and 11-17, 24-10.
Well, question though. I think that if Coach K was coming off of the back of losing seasons, I think he'd be given that. I think he would be given the opportunity to try to succeed. But if he was coming from if he's coming off the back of winning seasons, definitely not.
He was coming off the back of winning seasons.
Never mind.
Like Foster's last 3 seasons there were 27-7, 22-8, and 24-9.
So why did he leave?
I'm just gonna go out on a limb before I know anything and say he probably simply retired.
Oh, he's probably an old
Like,
man, huh?
no, actually, he went to South Carolina for reasons that I.
So
Yeah, he just decided to become the coach of University of South Carolina, I guess.
he's mad about that. He's
Yeah,
or Coach K is really happy about that. One of the two. This is what Paul said. Not Paul Pierce,
all
Paul
right,
George.
okay.
The way I was being used, I felt like Doc was trying to play me as Ray Allen or J.J. Redick. All pin downs. I can do it, but that ain't my game. That last season was just hard overall, and he spent a lot of time on all the smoke podcasts with Mike Barnes and Steven Jackson, just complaining a lot about this last season. I mean, I had shoulder surgery, and it was it was bad. I was in a dark place. He was just thinking, whatever. And then Doc Rivers and then Doc the reporter, of course, was like, Doc Rivers, guess what Paul George said about you, little simps. And Doc Rivers is like, and they told Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers is like, Ty Lue was sitting right next to me. Ain't gonna be much different. Does not act like it was just my decision. That your head coach now was my assistant coach last year. And everybody knows when Tyronn Lue's a head assistant coach, Tyronn Lue has a say in what goes on. Because Tyronn Lue is that guy, apparently, when it comes to the coaching staffs. So we're going to see. Luckily enough, I trust Kawhi Leonard enough to kind of overtake how much I don't trust Paul George. I did a lot last year, and that came back to bite me because Paul George became so unreliable. But, I hope this year is not the same thing. Because if it is, I've heard the argument that Paul George, there is a rhetoric out there by, I guess you would call them smart basketball fans, smart in quotes, of course, that Paul George is not a superstar player. Paul George is not a superstar, or is not a star player. Paul George is a really good role player.
Nah,
That's
that's a bad take.
the rhetoric out there, and Paul George, you might be able to make that argument. He's a really good role player, like a lot of what the Clippers had 2 years ago.
I think that's kind of a weak take as far as Paul George. I've never heard that before, honestly. The
Really?
only other person that Paul George is just a really good role player. The only other player in that kind of sphere of talent that I've heard that argument for was Melo. Carmelo Anthony.
Whoever said that is really nuts.
Well, and here's the thing, though. In fairness to people who make that argument for Melo, the reason you say it is not necessarily because of it's not like that's the only thing he can do. Just like Paul George, it's not necessarily the only thing he can do. But when you think of Melo, like he at least in particular prior to him, getting back in the league or whatever, you think of the desire to score and put the ball through the hoop to the detriment of all else, or to the exclusion of basically all else. Which doesn't say that was all he could do. I think he had a couple seasons where he averaged like 10 rebounds a game or what have you, and a couple seasons where he actually played defense. But in general, that's he would want to score to the detriment, regardless of whether or not he did anything else. Um, I Paul George isn't that.
I do tend to believe that the word star and superstar are thrown out too nonchalantly in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
like to become a superstar though, because people consider Paul George a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Paul George has never been clutch in the playoffs. Like if you think of Paul George moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think of like off the top of your head, if you think of a Paul George moment, you think of regular season games of him shooting far, that 360 windmill, that dunk on Birdman. You know what I mean? You think of very specific things, but nothing that's nothing that's like he has no superstar moments, and he's had opportunity to have superstar moments. Clippers, Pacers, and the Pacers team was really good. He was there too, going up against the Heat when they had Roy Hibbert and all them,
Mm-hmm.
and David West. That was a good Pacers team, and they were supposed to beat the Heat because the big men they had like the Miami Heat didn't have a big man, but also the big man they have was Roy Hibbert. So like that's a whole weird thing. But
Or
like
Hibbert was cold for like 2 seasons.
he wasn't even cold for 2 seasons. He just was like decent against like the Heat for some reason. Like, and that's no, not for some reason. And that's because the Heat had Joel Anthony. Like that was their big man. Like they had awful, awful big man. And Dennis Haslam is he's not great. Like he's never been great. Like he's an undersized big man, is what it is. But Roy Hibbert was a 7-footer who took charges. You know what I mean? Like it was a whole thing. Um, but that team still was like supposed to be Miami, which in hindsight you look at it and you're like that's nuts. But it is what it is. But like Paul George, like I can't think of any like moments that's like yeah that's a superstar. Besides like regular season stuff and like middle of the game stuff, nothing that was like oh he's solidified. Like every superstar you think moments, so it's like oh he's solidified as like a superstar. Paul George has never had those moments at all.
Like, I mean, in I'm not even sure I can necessarily argue against that too much. So I'm just gonna be here. In fairness, like my big moments for Paul George basically involve him and the Pacers getting railroaded by Miami, which isn't the argument you should be trying to make. But like when like it's just like when I teams, it's just kind of like they're really good, but like they still at the end of the day they still didn't do what they had the potential to do for better or for worse.
You know what's crazy?
Well,
I guarantee you remember more Lance Stevenson moments than you do Paul George moments with the Pacers.
I I don't know if I can agree with that, but it's like I'd have to sit and go through the vault and like there were a bunch of finals where like caught bits and pieces of it during like school trips, end of the year trips or whatever. So it's gonna be muddled in with other random stuff. But
Okay. All I'm saying is that is a rhetoric out there. I don't know if I believe it or not. I'm still on the fence about it. Like you could pull me either way with like how strong your argument is for or against Paul George, but all I do know is like I have no confidence in Paul George, and apparently he has no confidence in himself.
oh yes, because we got way off. So something I've been thinking about last couple days or so. Is it? I feel like and granted, maybe this is less true as you get higher up. Like, but I don't think it's necessarily true. One of the most important things a coach can do, I feel like, is recognize, and especially at lower levels, but recognize what the core of a player's game is.
Uh, for
Which
sure.
is to say, like, recognize, for example, that like there are some players like the core of their game is shooting. Steph Curry, for example. And so like if you're trying to figure out how to use them or like how to help them develop a better, like more well-rounded game or what have you, that is the starting point. You start with the fact that Curry likes to shoot and he shoots very well, and you build the rest of his game around that, which is basically what his game looks like. It's built around the fact that he can like hit from the logo fairly consistently. Um, and like I feel like I would like to think that most successful coaches are fairly good at doing that, or recognizing the strength and recognizing and attempting to maximize the strengths and weaknesses of their players. So like I'm not really sure if like Doc can be blamed for the fact that Paul George didn't show up when Paul George needed to show up.
I think one attribute to a successful head coach is that he puts his players in the best positions for them and the best positions to win. That is that's like the strongest attribute, honestly, for a coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
The issue is when Paul George took shots, he was really missing them. And then he was really missing open layups. Like stuff he should make, obviously. But if you were watching the games, he was just missing them. And you're like, how are you missing that? You know what I mean? It's like you got to make those shots. That one shot where he shot it and he hit off the side of the backboard, it wasn't like somebody was strong contesting him. And he just really missed that shot. And it wasn't out of pocket for him at that moment. So I'm not sure if you can blame Doc Rivers for that. Also, like, it's weird because he also didn't do good that last playoff season or that last playoff series in Oklahoma City. Remember when they missed all those threes? They hit like 1 3 the whole game. And like, it seems to be, because he's had, who is his coach? Billy Donovan, Oklahoma City. Doc Rivers, Clippers, and then for the Pacers, they had the head coach for the
Vogel, I think they had.
Vogel, yeah, the head coach for Lakers right now. And
no, actually, hold up.
Vogel
actually, in his last season, his head coach was Nate McMillan.
Okay, so name. Oh yeah, Vogel did.
They had Vogel before that though.
So Vogel, Nick McMillan, Billy Donovan, and Doc Rivers.
Right.
At some point, you can't. At some point, you just can't blame the coach. Like he's kind of been doing the same thing for all of his coaches. In certain moments, he'll be like Paul George, or Paul George just might be a good regular season player. Like there are those players do exist. He might end up just being a really good regular season player, but that's not good. You know, Kawhi. I'd much rather be Kawhi Leonard than Paul George.
I mean, most people would be, but like that's not saying a whole lot.
Meaning, like I do my best in the playoffs, not in the regular season. Right. That's it, right? Like if you like basketball and like winning, you'd rather be that. But Paul George just seems to be a regular season player, which is like the equivalent of like when you're playing in high school, and there's like guys who are really good in practice, like they were killing in practice. All of a sudden in the game, they can't do nothing. That's the exact same thing. Like it's these players exist, and it's a confidence thing more times than not. And I'm not Paul George psychiatrist, and I'm not trying to be, but I do question his confidence in himself, which is weird because you're in the NBA, so like you should have supreme confidence. But it is what it is.
I mean, like they are still just people, and like for a lot of people, and granted this isn't really Paul George's issue, but like I'm assuming especially for like a lot of the dudes who get there, like who are used to like being the best player on every court that they get on, and you get to the league and you're not the best player anymore, and you have the dude you spent your entire childhood looking up to busting you for 30 a game, like that's probably gonna hit the confidence a little bit.
But it's weird because he seemed to have a ton of confidence in Indiana. It's slowly dwindled, but he seems to have confidence issues, which if you're a superstar, that means you're on it. If you're considered a superstar, that means you're on a team where people are depending on you to be a superstar, and you can't afford to have confidence issues because you're going to be taking a bulk of the shots. And you're a 3-and-D player, not 3-and-D player, but you also play defense. So he's a two-way player, but he's just a basketball player. He's a two-way player. So all of a sudden you got to be defense too. Like, and defense takes a lot of confidence also. So it's like,
Yeah.
if your confidence is dwindling, then like it's gonna affect you big time, superstar.
Like you gotta like playing defense. There are a lot of dudes like in the league and just in general, like who will just phone it in on defense or just put all their effort in offense and the defense is trash.
I mean,
It,
I was like watching the Clippers this past season, and
hmm
I think Kawhi Leonard play defense. One's incredible because
hmm
he'll he'll get he'll get beat off the dribble, and then he'll pop up like he wasn't beat off the dribble. It's like it's really incredible. Like if you watch it, it's really incredible how quickly he recovers after getting beat. But to add to that, his hands are just so big, his arms are long, so he can like get to the ball even when he is beat. It's like it's literally insane to watch. But Paul George was supposed to be the same thing, but it's just not. I've always thought his defense was overrated because when Kawhi Leonard locks a player up, you see like man he's locking him up. Kawhi or Paul George be like man he's playing really good defense, but the man will still have 30 against him. It's like
in fairness though, right? One, like how the rules are set up, but also just like regarding like LeBron or Kawhi Leonard or like Carmelo Anthony or like any number of these or like Steph Curry. And like the thing is, the ideal situation with most of these dudes is that you slow them down, you make them inefficient because they're going to put the shots up, and they are good enough. They're probably going to make them. But like an ideal situation defensively when you have to guard the best player on the team is like um there was a series that Memphis played against Oklahoma City where uh Tony Allen like spent like most of the series more for whatever reason just seemed to be in like Durant's head for reasons like only Durant knows, I guess. And like Durant, he was still putting up like 30 points, but it took him like 37 shots or something to get his point. Like,
yeah.
and he was just irritated. And you make them work for everything, you make them get tired. So like in that respect, like the thing to check would be like, are like when he plays defense, are the dudes he's defending less efficient? Because if the answer is no, then yes, defense is entirely overrated. But if it is, then like you turn someone like you turn a really efficient shooter into a volume scorer all of a sudden. Like you can't ask for too much more other than a crap ton of turnovers.
I'll still argue that Kawhi Leonard, my bad, Paul George is still overrated even in that aspect.
I mean that might be the case. I'm just saying.
I'm just like I don't know. Like when you see a good defender, like Kawhi Leonard's good, great defender. Drew Holiday, great defender. Jimmy Butler, good defender, but people want to put him in the great category. But I'll say he's just good. He just looks great because he works hard. You know what I mean? Like he works hard, so
Yeah.
he's a good defender that looks great because he like hustles. He's like a I don't know. He's just like one of those guys. He just
Like half of it though is just trying to be a good defender though.
you say it again?
Like half of it is trying to be a good defender though.
Yeah, but then like so like you have Jimmy Butler who is like a good defender who looks great because he hustles. But you
Mhm.
have Kawhi, for instance, who actually I won't use him because he's just a different beast. But you also have uh, Drew Holiday, who's a great defender, who he doesn't look he's trying hard. He just looks like he's just playing good defense or great defense. You know what I mean? So like
Mhm.
it's just like it's kind of a difference, but I guess the results are still the same. I guess, but it is what it is. But then you have Paul George, who like he still be getting cooked, like he really does. But then you also have but then on the other spectrum, you have like Steph Curry, who's like not a great defender at all, but he just stays in the passing lanes and gets steals. So
Yeah.
like he looks like if you get 2 steals a game, 1 steal a game, and you dive on the floor twice, people will think you're a great defender. No.
Yep.
You're
No.
but you're really not, obviously. You know what I mean? But
You're good at playing the passing lanes, but like you're not stopping anybody.
it's just like Durant. Durant's not stopping anybody one-on-one playing defense, but he's getting block shots off of help defense and recovery defense. Also, he's an agile 7-footer. He should be getting blocks. Like he should be getting blocks. Like it's not that the fact that started blowing people's minds. Like he's a really good defender. Like 2 years ago, I'm like, no, he's not. He just gets help. He just plays help defense now. Like it's completely different. He's in a system where he did that. But he's not a good one. And it's just like there's not a lot of good defenders in the NBA. There's just a lot of guys who do different things on defense in the NBA. Draymond Green's not a he's an overrated defender. I'll say that.
Okay,
Draymond Green.
like, he's a good. I would like you might argue he's overrated. But I'm just gonna. Like I thought you would say he's not a good defender. Like I'd argue he's good, whether or not you think he's great.
I'll say he's an overrated defender, but he's one of those players that he's a product of his situation, right? Because in no other, like, I can't think of any other time where a player has been in the league as long as Draymond Green, been what people would consider a good to great defender, and not good at anything else, and stayed in the league.
In fairness to him, that's not the only thing he's good at. It's just like,
oh my bad.
He's a good passer.
My bad.
There was a point in his career when he could score a little bit.
We're not going to do that. He's not a good passer. Right. He's not a good passer. He gives Steph Curry chest passes and Klay Thompson chest passes, and they just happen to shoot the threes over the defenders. He gives basic passes, but they get elevated because he's passing to Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and at one point Kevin Durant. Like his passes, just that he makes the most basic passes. Chris Paul's a great passer. Rondo's a great passer. Draymond Green is an average passer.
Okay, I did not say he was a great passer. He's a good passer. Also, I feel like the type of passing that you need from a Draymond Green is not the type of passing that you need out of Chris Paul. Like you need better passing out of the point guard than you need out of like 3 or 4. But like for a person playing in those positions, he is a good passer in the way he passes, the way his game is set up. It works well. Now he's not. Now he, of course, his assists look better because, like you said, he's passing to 2 to 3 of the greatest shooters of all time, right? But like his passing can help. Like it is good. Like it's good passing. It's not going to wow you. It's not going to make you. It's not Rondo passing. It's not Lonzo Ball passing. It's not Chris Paul or Ricky Rubio passing.
It's like, literally he's giving Steph Curry a handoff. Steph Curry takes no dribble, shoots it, and he gets the assist.
You're selling him a little bit. You're selling him short.
That happens, but that happens way more than people like give credit to. Like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are such good shooters. Like they're such good shooters. They elevate that team. They elevate everybody else on that team to a status to where it literally made no sense. Like there's no one who can do what Steph Curry does. There's very few people that can do what Klay Thompson does. I mean, in history. Joakim Noah was doing what Draymond Green did. You know what I mean? Like, people can do what Draymond Green does.
But
no one can do what everybody else did. So, with that being the case, that elevated everybody else and made Draymond Green come across as like a much better but we're specifically talking about passing right now. Right. Passer and defender than, because also their defense were schemes to cover up Steph Curry's flaws in defense. They had to play scheme type defense, and Draymond Green also fits defense he fit in a defensive scheme. As soon as that scheme kind of had to be shifted when everybody was injured, once again, that's when you see people's true colors when when like the main players are injured, all of a sudden he was not a good defender. He was not a good passer. He was not a good scorer. He wasn't even a good rebounder. He wasn't even playing because he got exposed for all of these positive attributes that he brought forth for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it had been.
Well, I haven't watched their game this season, so I cannot tell you how trash
Or
they may
you
or may
should
not
going
be.
forward, but
But
last you
like,
should.
but like, what I will say though is that like, again, one of the benefits of him is that he's a versatile defender. Um, and again, like you said, when you have like Steph Curry, who is not a particularly good man defender, like that versatility has its benefits. It has its benefits in terms of like what you can do offensively, because that means you're not going to get burned as much on the defensive side of the ball. Um, but like I don't think there is anybody who like at any point with Draymond Green's career who felt like Draymond was like should ever be the dude, like should ever be the guy you have to look to for scoring, or like be your main focal point of an offense because that was never his game.
No, it wasn't.
Like, and so like of course he's not, and so like of course it's like it's not gonna go well if he has to be your main focal point.
Yeah. Listen, you don't gotta tell me that. Listen, I've been throwing out, and it's not. I think slander is what I'm not slandering Draymond Green because I'm just pointing out things that seemingly are not necessarily factual, but like they have a foundation behind what I'm actually saying. Right? I'm not just throwing things at him just because I hate him or whatever it is. I just like credit where credit is due,
Mm-hmm.
and I think too much credit, like weirdly enough, this is gonna sound strange, but I think too much credit is due, or too much credit has been given to Draymond Green, and I know a lot of credit has been given to Steph Curry and Klay Thompson or whatever, but I think they legitimately deserve more credit than they've been getting because they legitimately changed the game of. They legitimately, as one team, changed the game of basketball players because this happened before Durant even came. It was those two players doing, the shooting that they were doing changed the game of basketball at all levels: NBA, college, high school, middle school, and elementary school. It changed everything. So they get credit, but also like they just don't get enough credit. There's not too much credit they can get. It's kind of insane to say that, but it's what it is.
Well, if I may, real quick, um, argument. The only, if we want to make that argument, the only person who really changed the game to the level certainly that you're talking about, even on the team, it was just Steph. Like Clay, as good as he is,
Mm-hmm.
like he shoots threes like a normal human being,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right, generally speaking, right around the 3 point line. All right, Steph, he changed the game by not doing that, by shooting like he instead of just set shots, just shooting at a ridiculous clip off the like threes off the dribble from deep,
Mm-hmm.
like changing like you can't play defense on him like you do regular people. You have to change the scheme. He opens the entire like a shooter like him opens the entire floor up. You haven't no one's seen anything like that. So of course like kids want to shoot like him. Mind you, he didn't shoot like that when he was their age, but they don't care. Um
Trust me, I coach middle school.
and
I know it's rough.
like it's like and and of course he probably messed up a lot of like kids shoot like a regular human being first, get that down, and then start doing crazy stuff. I but in that respect, he changed the game more than anybody else. Um, Clay didn't really change the game that much. He's just really really good at what he does. Um,
I use.
Draymond,
Sorry,
hmm?
sorry, keep going.
Draymond a little bit in the sense that like yeah there were tweeners and whatever before him, but like one, he's the first one who really kind of stuck, and like we don't usually use the tweener thing anymore. Like, we like that versatility that he gave, um, and like in terms of like where you can place him on the floor, and that's an attractive thing that people look for now. Um, but like we want to be like Golden State changed the game. No, it's basically Steph. Steph changed the way the game was played. Everybody else in terms of that was just kind of the beneficiaries there.
I would say I agree to an extent. And the only reason I say to an extent is because I put Klay Thompson in that same category,
Mm-hmm.
and I say that because people people emulate like say Klay Thompson when they were like the first originally when they originally was just before KD.
Mm-hmm.
Klay Thompson was the best player on the team. It wasn't Steph Curry. It wasn't Steph Curry. It's Klay Thompson. And excuse me. And with that being the case, Steph Curry was a lot of the flair and the flair and the huzzah, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people were emulating Klay Thompson without even realizing it. Like Steph Curry was going up and shooting threes in transition, which was up until that point a bad shot for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But Klay Thompson was doing the same thing. Ray Allen wasn't doing that. Ray Allen going to the rim. Any other shooter that comes off screens weren't coming off screens and shooting like Klay Thompson. They were shooting like Klay Thompson and Steph Curry as a tandem were shooting bad basketball shots. Like they were just shooting bad shots. Steph Curry just happened to be shooting bad shots with dribbling. Klay Thompson was shooting bad shots without dribbling. And that's all. But at the end of the day, they were both shooting horrific basketball shots, which still today are bad basketball shots. They just happen to go away for those two because those two hand-eye coordinations is like it's not real. You know what I mean? But like you said, other people don't realize that. Other people don't realize they're not Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but still to want to take those shots. Yikes! So like while they change basketball, they also ruin basketball at the same time. You know, IQ intellectually wise at least. Not on purpose, just it comes with the territory being great. You know what I mean? Um, but that's why I put Klay Thompson in there as well because they were both just shooting bad shots and they both just happen to be making good shots or making those bad shots, which is one of those. If you're a coach and you're like stop, don't do that shot, it goes in. You kind of just be like whatever. And literally, Steve Curry did that. When Steph Curry did that dribble between everybody and then went to the 3-point line, just turned around and shot it. Like that was literally one of those shots. But you see that shot a lot now, like amongst like high schoolers, and you don't see it in college because it's a little too structured. But high school, like LaMelo Ball made a career off of that shot. Dribble, 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 go out, shoot a three, right? Like he was a YouTube sensation from shots like that, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is at this point. But that's why I put Klay Thompson up there with uh, Steph Curry. Also, apparently, that's like a hot take that Klay Thompson was a better player than Steph Curry, but whatever.
Um, I'm gonna move away from this just because there's really it's just me venting for like a minute or whatever with this basketball. Um, so like of course last time I saw Memphis play, which was earlier this week, which was middle last week, they looked better than they did at the start of the season, which is to say they have ball movement in the offense. It's not that good. Like it's kind of ugly to watch,
Is
but
Penny
it's
Hardaway still coach?
yeah, he's still coach. Like their defense is fine. Their defense looks good, it's causing havoc and turnovers. But then they get the ball, like at the start of the season, they get the ball, no passing. Whoever gets it just comes down and jacks up a bad shot, right?
Yeah.
And just like yeah, that's not gonna work. They have some ball movement now, which is improvement. It's better than no ball movement, but it's still not necessarily good ball
Yeah.
movement. And what women's I'm not a fan of the women's coach. No, it's just that I'm just not. It's just like I just feel like she's not maximizing the talent she has, and also has much. I feel like she has players on two sides of the leash, if you will.
Mhm.
Like like we talked about, like how some teams will be like super free flowing or whatever, or like players can kind of do what they want, and others is like super duper structured, where like you're only taking the shot, the coach that isn't going to shout at you for or what have you. Hers is closer to that end. The problem is that you have, what's the phrase I've seen used? What I think it because I caught two of their games this week.
Uh,
Um, and I believe there's a phrase that I've seen that was um snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
okay, I see you over here, Glory Road. That's a
Which was no, I have no idea where that came from, um, but no, that was they played St. Louis. They were up most like they were up going into like the final minutes of the fourth,
really.
and yep, they let St. Louis tie it up, and then St. Louis won in overtime. But it should have never gone to overtime. Um,
Man,
but
yeah.
also you have a really good 3-point shooter, and you don't let the 3-point shooter take good 3-point shots,
Mm.
and it's just like, what's the point? It's like you recruited them because they were a good shooter. They shot well. She shot well freshman year, but the shots that you give her to shoot are like release valve shots. They're shots after everything else is broken down and the shot clock is dwindling down to zero or what have you. Like most of them just aren't good shots.
Let me ask a question.
And
Why in college basketball are people so infatuated with this kid? What's his name? The white kid who transferred from Georgetown. Um,
Mac Mcclung,
yeah, and he goes to where now? Texas Tech.
um, I don't even remember. Hold on, I don't remember.
Why are people so infatuated with this kid though? Like, like I remember seeing his high school highlights. He's dunking all over the place, whatever it is. But
Hmm.
like, I'm getting updates when he scores 20 points. Like
So
updates. I'm like, what's going on?
it's here's the basic. There are two basic reasons for this. I feel like. All right, one is that he he's kind of like as like you and like you get a couple of these guys every season, one or like every so often. One of them dudes who's like kind of a human highlight reel in terms of like they do nice dunks and whatever. Um, and like there are a couple of those guys wandering around the NCAA pretty much all the time. Um, Granted, most of them um are like another dude who like probably falls in the Mac Mcclung thing would be like dang it, what's that dude's name? Played for Duke, tripped people. Don't know why he did that
Allen?
mess. Huh?
Bryson
Thank
Allen?
you. Like Grayson Allen. But also like McClung, like he was like the first he was the first good white basketball player at Georgetown in about 20 years.
Mm.
Or actually probably before, since basically Big John Thompson got there, rest in peace and all that. Um,
Rest in peace and all that. Ralph, sounding real genuine, Calvin.
well, like it's kind of sad that he went though, for real.
Rest in,
But like
rest in peace and all that.
that, whatever. But but like but basically since Big John got to Georgetown, which was in like the 80s, McClung was the first like white basketball player to play at Georgetown and average more than 10 points a game, or average 10 points a game or more.
Really?
Um, yeah, but a lot of it is probably just a general infatuation with like he can put people on posters every so often. Like he's a solid player. It's
Okay.
I don't know, kind of a weird spectacle thing, I suppose.
Oh, okay. Because I did not understand the hype. I'm like, he went to Georgetown. Like usually people go to a place and they transfer away. You only really hear about him from like that place they transferred to. And I'm just like, because that happens every year, right? People transfer, They got to take a year out, they do the whole entire thing, whatever. But I'm just like, why am I getting ESPN updates about this kid? Like, that never happens. But I was, and I was like, all right, let me ask Calvin what's going on. Because I won't lie to you, I watched the first half of the KU Washburn game, and that's all the basketball I watched in terms of like actual basketball playing this past week, which was, Washburn's Division Two. You know, KU plays them, and KU plays Washburn. KU pays money to Washburn for them to pay them so they can beat the brakes off them, essentially. You know what I mean? It's like one of those kind of deals.
Right.
And I watched the first half of that, and I didn't watch the second half because I was like, oh, I got other things to do. Didn't watch a team get blown out, especially with no fans in the crowd. It's like, I'll at least watch something like good with no fans, but nothing like this. So that's all I watched personally this past week, though, outside of like interviews and the usual stuff I watch in terms of the NBA and things like that. So is that it?
I mean, it's just like there's some other games that I've watched.
Oh, okay, keep going.
So, well, it's like the thing is I don't have as much detail for them because it's just it's just like what I think Baylor played, like Baylor's women's team played Iowa State, I think. No, 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 no. Correct. It was Arkansas. They played Arkansas.
If
Lost.
you ask me,
Mhm.
Philip, what do you know least about in this world? I would say the Arkansas women's basketball team. I know nothing about that at all. Like I know nothing about their team. Granted, I don't know much about women's basketball in the first place. Um, and that's not like I don't watch women basketball because it's women playing basketball kind of thing. It's just that I watch so much and I got so much time that like I just don't have time to watch Sunday games and Sunday games on ESPN and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So I kind of keep it up for you guys to like keep me you know involved in the women's basketball talk.
Well, like as far as it goes, as far as their team, in fairness, this is kind of selling the team collectively short. But like the main person that people are going to talk about is Chelsea Dungy, um, who put up 22, in the game, and spent a lot of the game with 4 fouls.
Mm.
Uh, at least the end of the shoot had him by the end of the game anyway. Um, but like I I don't know. I didn't watch that one with the volume up, so it's just like I don't have that much to comment about, other than like it was a good game. It was close at the end.
Do
It
you
was
have
hard.
anything?
Oh yes,
Okay,
something that I would like to whine about. This is what I no. It's basically whining, man. But it's not just with them, but it's basically all college basketball. The reffing has been hot garbage.
what is?
The refereeing has not been good.
Oh gosh.
Like it feels like there's been a lot of phantom foul calls, a lot of ticky tack stuff, um, a lot of like just general like you probably just didn't need to call that, like because
Yeah.
it's to the point where it's just like it kills the pace of the games, and it's just kind of like why, like some of it's just like that was a bad call, that was a good call, but you didn't necessarily need to call that. You could have left that. You could have just let them play
Okay.
and what have you, and some of it's just like bad. Like it just it has made a lot of the games, even the ones that I've enjoyed watching. It's made a lot of the games a lot less enjoyable and a lot more annoying to watch.
I just that's interesting. I I don't know. I think I'm in this mode of where training camp. God, this happened so fast. Training camp for the NBA just started,
Hmm.
which is nuts to me. But like I'm in this mode of like I'm listening to like the after practice press conferences of like the coaches and uh, some of the players and just
Hmm.
seeing things right now where that's going because I know what the season starts December 22nd. Like, it's gonna be a lot, man. It's gonna be a lot, and I'm like getting my head wrapped around this basketball season, like kind of normal again. You know what I mean? Because according to like the doctors, like first phase one, phase two, phase three, all kind of stuff when it comes to the vaccine is gonna be happening around like springtime, March ish. Um, like according to like Fauci and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, so we're gonna see about that. But by the time like the NBA finals come around, which is what like June-ish now, I guess. For this upcoming season, about like June, like a normal season, I guess would.
Hmm.
Um, Things might be completely different than what they are now. You know what I mean? So I'm just like,
Yeah.
the next 6 months are so unpredictable. Like it's just so much. I'm just trying to wrap my head around like, hey man, sports are gonna be it's gonna be full throttle because football season still and it's basketball or NBA basketball and it's college basketball and I'm gonna be like, and I still got like a life. I'm coaching. Uh, I gotta get my 2 hours of YouTube in before I go to sleep every night. Like it's still a whole giant thing, and I'm just like,
I mean, the thing to do as far as like trying to watch stuff is just like pick a couple games out every week. You're like, these are the ones I'm gonna watch, and let the rest fall where it may. Like,
I already know what I'm gonna do. Listen, I have NBA League. I have NBA League Pass. I watch the Pistons because my favorite player is Derrick Rose.
mhm.
I'm gonna watch the Clippers because the Clippers. And I like Kawhi Leonard. And I'm gonna watch the Pelicans. Every game, I'm gonna try to watch one of those 3 teams, and then I'm gonna watch KU. But then all of a sudden, I might have to end up watching the ESPN game of the day because it might be like the Clippers, or it might be like I don't know, Lakers versus Celtics, or it might be Heat versus 76ers. You know what I mean? Like it's like one of those like really good games. I'm like, oh, I gotta watch that too. So like I've been doing this my whole life. I've been doing my whole life, but like right now I'm in the calm before the storm. That's what it is in my mind. I'm just like, oh, it's coming.
Something we forgot to talk about actually on the pod, that we were talking about before we started rolling, was that thing I pulled up for you, just before, like, I get that's a drop today. That whole thing with the NBA implementing a new resting policy.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
in like for those unaware, the NBA is supposedly going to be implementing a new resting policy for the 2020-2021 season, which prohibits teams from resting healthy players for like high profile nationally televised games. And the like violating that could result in fines of at least $100,000.
I'm surprised the players union didn't like combat that because that's like a really like dance monkey dance. We're playing you kind of like mindset. So I'm really surprised the players union allowed that to be a thing. Unless they're just like planning or hoping that like they can come like a ticky tack injury. You know what I mean? Like just kind of like toss it out there and all of a sudden like oh he can't play because of this. But like I don't like that. Like I'm pro player over pro like corporation or like management or owner, whatever it is. So the more power the players have, the happier that I am. Like I want the players to have as much power as can possibly be, and I think this kind of counteracts that. And I don't know, like it isn't kind of counteract it. It really does counteract that. So I don't feel too great about it. Granted, I just found out about this. I don't know how long have we been going.
Uh, this is this is some news that dropped today.
Okay, because I just found out about this before the podcast started. And that might be like an hour and a half ago, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And I'm gonna sleep on it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna sleep on it because right now in here, like initially, I don't like it, but I'm gonna sleep on it to give more in depth reasons of why I don't like it. Because like I know I don't like it, but I want to be able to articulate why I don't like it, like truthfully and honestly, because it's obviously not a good thing. Players, you're taking away power. You're taking away power from the players. What is this, 1940? You better play or else. Like, come on now. Like, you're gonna take $100,000. You better turn that $100,000 into charity or something like that. Like you better do something like that, as you're gonna take money from these players and don't put it in your own pockets. Don't do that.
So
I, you best know you better not do that.
just to